If I had to sum up my experience with this motorcycle in 2 words, I would use peaceful and pleasant. Now I realize that some of you might be like, really? Those are the words that you would choose to describe the Xpulse? And I understand why, because generally speaking, this bike is perceived as this action off-road like adventure motorcycle, dual sport, and that's how it's been showcased to a large extent, even in a lot of the review content and the way people have spoken about it. But for me, this bike has been something very different. This has literally been my do-everything motorcycle. When I bought it, I was also under this impression that, you know what, primarily this is going to be like this off-road exploration motorcycle. But as I started riding it, it was so easy to ride, it was so effortless to ride that I started using it for pretty much everything else. So out of the 6,000 and odd kilometers that I've ridden so far, I would say about 2,500 is highway distance, at least 2,000 is just city commuting, and another 1,500 whatever would be like some trail exploration and things like that. So actually this bike has become like my go-to motorcycle. It's the motorcycle that I don't think twice about using for anything. It stands out where it needs to. You know, when you park it separately, people notice it, people want to know more about this bike, what's it called, and of course what mileage it gives. But also when you park it in like a busy parking lot, it sort of just blends in. And that's kind of good. I've used this motorcycle to ride to Paris Corner. If you're from Chennai, you know what Paris Corner is, and it's probably the worst place to put your motorcycle. But because this one sort of blends in over there, and then it stands out when you need it to, and it does pretty much everything quite nicely. For me, it's become like this default. I'm getting out of my house, I need to go do something. Maybe it is go out for a 200-kilometer trail ride, maybe it is just go to the grocery shop. I use this motorcycle, which is why I say that it's been pleasant. The peaceful part we'll talk about as we get through this review. Rather than use this video to just throw random information at you, I figured I'd use it as an opportunity to sort of address the questions that have come my way in terms of what people are most sort of concerned about or want to know about this motorcycle. And I think there are two things that I've seen very often. The first is, of course, about power. Is it underpowered? And the other is about saddle height and like riding in the city and things like that. We'll focus on that second. First, let's talk about power. The fundamental truth that you need to realize and admit is that this is a 200cc motorcycle. I think I've seen a lot of people trying to compare this to motorcycles that are double the capacity, also double the price, if not more, and then wonder whether this will perform the same as those motorcycles. And the simple answer to that is no. The more important question, I believe, is as a 200cc motorcycle, does it feel underpowered? And again, the answer to that is no. This engine has been surprisingly good, to me at least, because when I took it out on the highway, I expected that, you know, I'd be doing about 90 at best. That would be my cruising speed. And 90 to 100 is the most comfortable cruising speed on this motorcycle. But I made this video sharing my experience of riding from Mysore to Chennai in one day, 475 kilometers. I did it in about 8.5 hours, and I found that I was able to cruise at over 100 quite comfortably. I will admit that the motorcycle is closer to the red line when you're doing speeds like that. It's at about 7,000 plus RPM. So you do expect that the engine might heat up and you might have some issues, but that didn't happen. So far, I've never had any of those issues. And in that sense, I think as a 200cc, it does a lot more than I expected of it. But it would be unfair to compare it to something that's double the capacity, unless, of course, you're comparing it to my Thunderbird 500, because that is a 500cc motorcycle, supposedly. And on that, my cruising speeds were about 90 to 100. And, you know, you could push it above 100, but then the brakes weren't good. So then that was always not like the safest combination, of course, the vibrations. So actually, even though this is not a highway motorcycle by any means, it is more comfortable, or for me at least, it has been more comfortable to ride on the highway. More than the engine, the seat comfort has actually been the challenge, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But in terms of performance, smoothness, and just a lack of fatigue, this motorcycle has been better than that 500cc. But if you compare it to the newer age 390s and 400cc engines, they will have more grunt, they will have more power. The only situation where I felt, you know, I wish I had a little better performance is when you're trying to do high-speed overtakes, because you're already going quite fast, you want to quickly zip past something. At that point, you do really wish you had a little bit more power. And yeah, there are people who say Xpulse 300 would have been the perfect thing. Maybe something like that will come in the future, but currently I would say Xpulse 300 would also cost more. So at this price and this package, I think the performance is something that I've personally been very satisfied with. Now, the other aspect is seat comfort, as I was saying. That is actually where this motorcycle suffers in terms of, covering distance. As I mentioned in my video about the modifications I made on this motorcycle, all of these videos will be linked in the description so that you can go see them if you haven't already. I've added some padding to the seat. It's just a custom job that we did, and that's made a huge difference. I also started using motoskivvies. Motoskivvies are basically motorcycling underwear. You know how cycling, you get cycling shorts which have some amount of padding to make seat comfort a little bit better. This is something similar for motorcyclists. And that again has gone a long way in sort of helping me be more comfortable when I'm putting in long hours on the saddle on this bike. The other thing, of course, is to take breaks whenever you feel fatigued and walk around a little bit, get some time off the saddle. That helps you sort of cover more distance. But I would say the fundamental truth again is that this is not a long distance motorcycle ideally. It's not the bike on which you want to be doing 700, 900 kilometers a day. If you're going to do 700, 900 kilometers a day for like 2-3 days, and then you're getting to a place where you really want to go crazy and explore routes that are like really terrible, or basically not have any hesitation about going out to explore, then yes, this is the bike on which I would choose to do that. But if you're just going to do highway runs, a golden quadrilateral and things like that, this is not the bike for you. Oh yeah, before we talk about the seat height part of it, mileage, that's something people want to know. Usually from full tank till reserve, till the light starts blinking, I've been able to get about 350. So the mileage I'm getting is, I think at the most about 40, but it can drop to 35 depending on how I'm riding. When I'm riding faster, then I do lose mileage for sure. And I usually don't let it dip all the way down. So I haven't done a full to empty test. It will probably give me another 50, like 400 plus kilometers. It should do that. But I normally, because there's a fuel injection engine, it has an electronic fuel pump. So I don't like to let the fuel drop below that reserve. So once it starts blinking is when I try to tank up, as long as fuel is available. So 350 is what I get, but sometimes that drops to about 300, 310. That's the mileage story. Coming to the subject of seat height, I'm not a very tall person. I'm 5'7". To the people who said, please tell us your height. Okay, I'm around 5'7", so by no means tall. And I've raised the seat. So when I'm sitting on this bike like this, you can see I'm not like entirely flat foot. I'm on my toes a little bit, ball of my feet, which is good, not entirely like on my tiptoes. So I prefer, I might do this when I'm trying to push the bike or do something like that. I will just use both feet on the ground. But generally, one of the tips that anybody who's teaching you to ride a taller bike, when you're a shorter person on a taller bike, one of the tips that they'll give you is to slide off the seat. This bike has a narrow seat so that you can slide off the seat and plant your foot firmly on the ground when you're stopping. So this is the part that you need to get used to. You need to like practice it a bit. Depending on whether you're using the brake or the gears, you decide which side you're sliding off. And the bike is super light, which is what? Like, it works for me because of that. Because the bike is light, I'm not afraid to sort of land up in situations where eventually my feet touch the ground lower and I have to hold up the weight of the bike. I can do it quite easily. So it's like not at all intimidating. And seat height, personally, I think is not a problem. You just need to get used to it, and you need to adapt a little bit and maybe change the way that you stop, what your body does when you stop. The thing that I've enjoyed the most about this motorcycle, and the reason why I said it's peaceful, is because it's practically been problem-free. 6,000 kilometers, I haven't replaced anything. It's just gone in for 2 services. The service cost me about 450 rupees, that's it. And it's almost time for 3rd service. Of course, after the free services get over, we'll have to see what that costs. But again, it's not going to cost too much, is what I estimate. It takes about 1.25 liters of oil. So far I've been running it on stock oil, stock everything. I haven't, apart from the few changes I made for ergonomics and luggage and stuff like that, I haven't changed anything else, because also under the warranty period I don't want to mess around with much. That's one of the reasons why I haven't even added aux lights. The headlight isn't the greatest. It's definitely better than what I had on my Thunderbird, but when you compare it to like a KTM headlight or something, then it's not too great. So it would, there will be scenarios in which you wish you had better light. Personally, I don't ride in the dark much, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, the headlight could have been better. But coming back to my point of it being peaceful, no problems so far, touch wood, touch whatever, Rexine. And also interesting, I have to share this with you. Before I went out on tour on this motorcycle, I went to buy the spare parts, because I'm used to riding my Royal Enfield. I have this tendency to, want to have all the parts, because you never know what's going to go wrong when. And I went to buy these parts, and usually when I was buying parts for the Thunderbird, it would cost me about 2,500, 3,000. Accelerator cable was about 600 rupees. Each thing was about 600, 700 rupees, and it wasn't a great experience. But when I went to get the parts for this bike, I got the levers, I got the cables, I got a bunch of things, and I got a bill for it, and that bill was like 600 rupees. So I actually asked them, have you billed me for everything? Have you billed me for all of the parts? And they were like, yes sir, everything is here. So that was such a lovely moment for me, because I strongly believe that the motorcycle should not be sort of sucking either your money or your time out of your experience. When you're going out to travel, wander and explore, this should aid that and elevate it rather than taking away from it. So far it's definitely done that for me. I hope that's how it remains. We're going to have to sort of actually use it to see how that plays out. You can never say anything is a 100% guarantee, but so far it's done that. And the few times that I've had to spend money on it for things that are usual, wear and tear, usual things that you need to do frequently, regular maintenance, it's cost almost nothing. Peaceful, pleasant. There are also, of course, things that could have been done differently that I would have liked to have seen done differently on this motorcycle. Few pet peeves, if you will. The first thing that I find most annoying on this motorcycle is the gear shift indicator. They've used some sort of a software system for telling you what gear you're in. Basically, the minute you touch the clutch, it goes blank. It gives you a dash. So when you actually are changing your gears is when you don't know which gear you're in. And quite often, you're not thinking about it. If I didn't have a gear shift indicator, I'm more sort of aware of what gear I'm riding in, and I sort of get that feel of the motorcycle. But here I have an indicator, and whenever I look at it, at the time when I need it the most, is when it doesn't give me any information. It's only after you've sort of released the clutch and you've ridden a little bit that it then tells you which gear you're in. So that is something that should definitely be done differently on this motorcycle. The other thing connected to the console, I noticed that the trip meter, your trip A, trip B meter, resets after just 999 kilometers. For most people who are riding in the city, that's not a problem, because usually you use the trip meter for either checking tank range or something like that, which is within that 999. But when I go out touring and it's resetting after 999, I need to literally, how they used to make those chalk marks of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Unless I'm keeping track like that, I'll eventually lose any context of how many kilometers I've actually done on a trip. So that is something that I think should be different. I also am not a fan of the side stand. For a tall motorcycle like this, I wish they'd given us a more sturdy side stand. Especially when you have luggage on the motorcycle, you don't really want to keep throwing your leg up and getting in through that gap between the luggage and the tank bag, right? That time it would be nice to be able to get onto the foot peg and throw your leg over. And I found on this motorcycle, at least from the left side of the bike, trying to do that, it's virtually impossible. So then you sort of have to do it from the right side of the bike. But even then, the side stand feels flimsy. I have added a foot to the side stand, which makes it a bit wider. And that has helped to a certain extent. But I do wish that they'd given us a more sturdy side stand that can just take the weight of you when you're sort of getting onto the bike, putting your leg on the foot pegs. You will also notice that I've removed the graphics on the tank and I've added a tank grip. I think a tank grip is something that should have come stock on this motorcycle, given that it's primarily a dual sport. I understand that different people like to position their tank grip a bit differently. You can see that I've actually placed mine upside down because I felt like it gives better coverage for the places I like to grip the tank when I'm standing and riding. That's what it's for. A few people have asked me about that. That is to give you grip when you're holding the tank with your legs when you're standing and riding. But it would have been nice if they'd sort of added that in when the motorcycle comes out of the showroom. And then you can always, if you want to change it, you can remove it and put something else on. But that would have been a nice addition. But I think my biggest complaint with the motorcycle right now is this rusting issue that I'm having. Let me show you what I'm talking about. The build quality of the bike has been great in every sense, except for this one problem. If you look at the exhaust pipe, it got rusted, I think, within like 2.5, 3 months of ownership, and it's really brown. It's not like disintegrating or anything of that sort. It's just changed color and it looks quite unpleasant. It's definitely a rust issue. Initially I thought maybe it was like mud from all the off-roading, but after having washed the bike several times, trying many different things, I've noticed that it's rust. This is something that I told the Hero dealership about, and to be fair, they have promised to replace this under warranty itself, but I've been waiting a few months and the part hasn't come, so it would be nice if this could be fixed. And I have to also say, I haven't seen this on any other Xpulse. If anybody out there who owns an Xpulse has faced the same issue, please do drop a comment. Maybe that's something that we need to bring to their attention. But on my motorcycle, there is this rusting issue, and this will be changed under warranty. Fingers crossed. If anybody from Hero's watching this, I've been waiting for a few months. Please send the part. Please just change this on my motorcycle. So overall, to conclude, to sort of bring this to conclusion, my personal experience, my ownership experience, my honest review of this motorcycle after owning it for about 5 months and having put in significant mileage on it in different conditions, I would say that this is definitely something that Hero can be proud of. This is something that I am proud of. I've grown more attached to this motorcycle, and that's always a nice thing, right? When you buy a bike for one thing and then you start realizing that, I actually like using it for more than just what I bought it for. That's a very pleasant experience. It does have its limitations. Like I was saying, if you're someone who wants to do a lot of highway distance, this is not going to be for you. If you're someone who travels with a lot of luggage, this is not going to be for you, because there is a limitation in terms of how much luggage you can carry. One of the changes I do hope to make on this motorcycle in the future is to find a not too loud custom exhaust that I can use, which might just tuck in beside, under this, so that I can have the option to use saddlebags on this bike as well, because otherwise it's fairly limiting. I will not be loading this bike up too much with luggage, but it would just be nice to be able to keep the luggage closer to the rear seat rather than pushing it all to the back. So in terms of how much you carry, there is a limitation on this motorcycle. That's something you need to be conscious of. And I also think that if you're riding with a pillion comfort, from what I've experienced and people who've ridden with me have experienced, it is quite good. The suspension on this motorcycle is a dream. Really, it pampers you. The suspension, no rally kit required, just the suspension the way it is, the stock suspension, is a dream, even for the pillion. But if you want to ride 2 up with luggage, that's going to be a huge challenge. You're probably going to need a bigger motorcycle for that. So these are the sort of limitations that I see. I actually love riding it in the city. It took me a little while to get used to being higher than the rest of the traffic. So when bikes came at me from lower, below my handlebar, it was a little bit unnerving at first. But after I got used to that, it's been a breeze. You can maneuver, you can get through traffic, you can do whatever it is really easily. Again, that little bit I was telling you about how you place your feet. Again, that's something that you need to just get used to a little bit, and then it's a dream. So in terms of having made the decision to spend my money to buy this motorcycle, contrary to what a few people suggest, it was not given to me for free. I paid full price to buy this motorcycle. I am very certain that I made the right choice. I do hope to do a lot more with this bike. Let's see what happens in 2021. There are a few ideas, but there is still a pandemic. Travel is beginning to open up. I hope that we'll be able to do a few interesting trips with this motorcycle, but I'm not in a rush. I'm not in a hurry. I think all in good time, we will do it. I just hope that this video was useful to some of you out there who are trying to find out a little bit more about this motorcycle and wanted an honest opinion about it. And also to those of you who already own this motorcycle, I hope that you were able to relate to some of the things that I was saying and like connect with it. I've noticed that we're forming this bond, fellow Xpulse owners. Hopefully we will get to meet and ride together someday. Thank you as always for making the time to watch this video. I will catch you guys in the next one. போங்க சார், கொஞ்சம் சீக்கிரமா போங்க, நாங்க வீடியோ ரெக்கார்ட் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கோம். சார் ஆக்சிலரேட்டர், வண்டி போகும், கொஞ்சம் ஸ்பீட் போகும், போங்க.